For many years, I have set up a planner in anticipation of the new year. And in the good years, I order it around October, and then I set it up usually the week between Christmas and New Year's. 2025, as it happens, the 17th day of the month on Friday, I still had not opened the new planner. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. As with many of you, I have not been rushing into this new year with open arms, and yet here we are. Undeniably, in a year in which we fear for our hearts, for the gyrations our mind will be put through, and for our souls, as well as the basic survival of our democracy. As the child of a man who was incarcerated before grade school as part of the internment of Japanese Americans, I have always known the aspirational nature of our democracy, as many among us have, as well as its flaws. Nationalism and blind patriotism were always to be feared and tempered by the idea that we were making slow yet steady progress towards a more perfect union, a slight rephrasing of the phrases in the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. And in fact, that phrase, towards a more perfect union, was on a very battered poster which moved from one set of walls to another in my young adulthood. So you can see why I'm just beginning to fill in the pages on that 2025 planner. But they're starting to fill up. Now, many, if not most of us, understand that our democratic ideals in this country, while exceptionally promising in some ways, began in the disenfranchisement of those indigenous to these lands and have never known their full promise. They've always been just that, democratic ideals. As historian and commentator Heather Cox Richardson points out, our failure to pay attention to the points of tension in those flaw areas, those weaker areas that have gone unaddressed, she believes, since the conclusion of the Civil War has been at our peril. Certainly, we have never been able to square the accumulation of wealth in this nation by means of the enslavement of other humans, and our inability to do this lands us where we are now, defending, she says, the very idea of democracy itself. So, it is important for us, as a people who have made equity and democracy an actual tenet of our faith, to grapple with what it means to be champions of democracy now. And this is the first of 3 sermons that I will be talking about this over the next couple months, because it's about how we can pay attention to what matters for the democracy's survival in a time of much smoke and mirrors will depend upon it, I believe, and many do as well right now. Now, since that first week of November, I have spent a great deal of time listening to and reading and thinking about so many aspects of what the issues are among us that we must pay attention to. And what I can say is that there are so many of them, it is not one thing. So I hope among us we can just simply say it is a multiplicity of things that led us to where we are today, fearful of the week ahead of us and worried. Some of them are not the ones we think they are, and I think many of those are the economic ones, such as the gross wealth inequity in this nation. And some of them, I believe, are the super wicked problems, such as climate change, which many would much rather be distracted about because they seem too large to affect, and because we know they are going to take more than just little fixes around the edges. They are going to take major disruptions of how we are and the way we are, and they will take something we don't like to say, which is sacrifice. Now, some keen observers have noted that we seem to have lost the ability also in the midst of all of this to hold nuance. So our pendulum keeps swinging from one side to the other in a very disorienting pattern. But I think democracy, if it is truly to realize its promise, requires us to be able to hold things in tension that may seem to be contradictory to one another. Democracy requires a number of things. Democracy requires us to have accurate information. And I want to be really clear about this. What I am not suggesting, is a 24-hour diet of news. And I say that because I know some of you in your anxiety and fear have gotten caught in that cycle. And you're telling me that you're just constantly having the headlines pop up on any device or in your home, or you're listening all the time, and it's making you more and more and more anxious. That is not what I'm talking about. Of course, we need also not to have a total abstention from the news, right? Because some of you are saying, it's too scary, I'm not listening to anything. And there's probably a nuance in between those two positions, 24 and nothing. Maybe it's picking out a few relatively stable and reliable sources and consuming them more like a fine wine than like your daily allotment of water. Right. And being willing, yeah, there's a comment from the choir, we got that. And being willing to advocate for, and this is important, advocate for and contribute to those reliable sources that you count on, because we want to keep them accurate and available to us. And we may have some challenges in that area in the months to come. In the week before us, we are going to learn of policies designed to demonize and exclude people we love. And for some of them, that may be about self-love for some of us. We may hear that being born in another land and coming here, as almost everybody's relatives did at some point, is a threat to our economy, despite the fact that we have had an incredible labor shortage for years now. We will learn that claiming one's identity as a transgender person endangers those who identify as male or female for some reason that I have yet to hear any case made. Maybe just because it's unfamiliar. And we will also know that we will hear that marriage is to be reclaimed only for heterosexual relationships, and to hear the virtues of being a trad wife. That's short for traditional, i.e., one who works at home and raises children. Democracy requires us to recognize our common interests and our common humanity. What we're seeing today is the outgrowth of a long, generations-long campaign to discredit our ability to work together, and the way we do that is through our government. That campaign has been a huge success. Even those of us who believe we should work together are also skeptical that we can do that through our shared enterprise of government. And though we will hear senseless and hateful things said about our neighbors around the globe, and senseless and nonsensical things about science and facts on a regular basis, we will also hear senseless and attacking things said about people who have dedicated their lives to public service, many of whom are sitting in this room. We might hear that it's time to move beyond democracy to a time of leadership by a small, wiser group. And they're wise because their unethical behavior has allowed them to amass unbelievable amounts of wealth. That apparently equates to wisdom. Democracy requires participation. Heather Cox Richardson points to the role that new voter suppression laws have played in last year's elections, with over 700 new voting laws put in place since 2020. And one of the reasons democracy is important for us here is that this is a place where we try to move into all the messiness that is democracy, and your board is putting forward proposals this week and next week to make our process work better, but it's not an easy thing. It takes engagement. It takes being willing to mix it up. So that's important to think about as far as participation. In the same way that you can bring your favorite MLK quote to put on a piece of poster paper and gather tomorrow for an hour at the corner of Broadway and Civic to remind ourselves and our neighbor of our right to witness for what is true, to participate in that aspect of our democratic process. Democracy requires leadership focused on the actual issues of our times, not the ones I've already told you we're going to hear a lot about. And in the days to come, when we're having some big, confusing fuss about some ridiculous idea about buying out other nations, I would ask you to be curious about what the actual issue is that those actions are designed to distract us from. What is it that's actually happening that someone doesn't want us to pay attention to? This distraction is real, and so what we need to do is be willing to be the ones to keep our eyes open and on the real issues, despite all the reality TV diversions. Come by here, kumbaya. It will take all our human capacities, and maybe some days a little more. So come by here to keep us focused on the climate change before us, whose effects are clear in the devastations of the fires in Southern California that have affected our neighbors so much, and in the extreme weather around our nation and the world. Come by here to protect the rights and health of lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, and queer folks. Come by here to protect those who have come to these shores seeking better lives, seeking to escape the oppression that now they are encountering here again, and the diversity of all races who seek the promise of democracy. Come by here to safeguard the rights and health of women. Come by here to hold the rights and health of children, too many of whom live on poverty and too many of whom in their teen years are now living alone on our streets. Come by here to keep resources flowing to those in ill health or disabled, our elders and those who worked long and are now in retirement, expecting that they will have some security and safety. Come by here to hear the anger of the working age people who are in economic despair, because they know that they may never have the means to have the kind of shelter and stability that the generations before them have had to prosper and feel security. Come by here to recognize the many being squashed in an economy now streamlined to put its profits only into the pockets of a very few and likely to move more into that direction. Come by here, because these are the real issues we cannot lose sight of. And I tell you, friends, it will be hard to keep our eyes on the prize because there's going to be so much reality TV in front of us. So many fearful days, so many confusing weeks, so many exhausting months, and there will be some long years to come. And yet we do not do it alone. We will need to resist the tendency to belittle or mock one another, or to attack one another, because the culture is one of belittling, scorning, mocking, blaming, and division. We will also need to know that part of how we will have the strength to do this is through celebration, joy, play, and spiritual nourishment. Now, if you have any part as you enter into this house of your home that needs to be cleaned up, I suggest you take up preaching. I find that whenever I have to preach, I have this urgent need to clean. Suddenly, that is the moment where I have to clean my office. So on Friday night, I had to clean my office. And it felt kind of delightful to me that I suddenly came across a paper copy I've had forever of Dr. King's letter from the Birmingham jail, which is actually going to be the focus of the service tomorrow in Concord. And I think what he speaks to in that sermon is about what's seen and what's not seen. That we're going to have a tendency to want to keep things under the radar, and some of us who are most targeted actually need to stay under that radar. But others of us may need to be visible in ways that are uncomfortable. And yet we cannot forget that we will undertake this because we believe in this larger ideal that is important for us to keep before us, this new form of democracy that was put forward in this land for all the mistakes and the ways it was done. There is something within it that is worth protecting. And I think we need to be among those who are willing to protect it. In the long arc of history, I believe that we can do this. We can base our direction on real information. We can be a place of sanctuary for those who will be the subject of bullying and scorn. We can participate, we can keep ourselves focused on the real issues, especially if we do it together. Our democracy has always been a work in progress. Though not perfect, it is still precious. Can we be the ones to pay attention and hold it to the spirit of those like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who worked so hard and gave the ultimate sacrifice to bring it into a fuller part of its potential? Today and tomorrow, can we declare that we will work hard to ensure it does not die on our watch? Come by here, kumbaya, to protect this ideal, that its spark might be kept alive. Come by here and pay attention to what is true.